At the start of the series story, a man named Stephen Grant is shown. He awakes in the morning and separates the chains from his feet. Later, he removes the tape from his door, and then calls his mother while feeding his fish. He goes for his job and he works in a museum. A girl who was his colleague also likes him and asks him to go to the restaurant on Friday night. Stephen used to talk to a statue before leaving and says, "Whenever I sleep at night, I awoke in another place." He says that's why I tried to stay awake whole night. And says I have to do something, otherwise, my colleague will break friendship with me if she will discover this. Then he fixes tape on his door and then chains his feet and tries to solve the puzzle. So he will stay awake for the whole night. Meanwhile, he reads about the Egyptian god and then sleeps unwillingly. He awakes and stops at an unknown place and hears a mysterious voice. It asks him to sleep again, and Stephen gets scared hearing this because there was none, and then he feels something in his pocket. As he takes out the thing, the Egyptian of God, Moon Knight, comes behind him. When he turns, some people start firing at him and he reaches a city while running. He sees a man named Arthur Harrow there who worships the Egyptian god named Ammit. He feels while holding people's hands that who is right or who is wrong. He serves the souls of the wrong people to the Egyptian god, Ammit. Harrow sees Stephen and asks for the mysterious thing from him. That he takes out from his pocket, and Stephen doesn't want to give it to Harrow. The strange voice that he heard before forbids him to give this thing to him. It also makes his hands frozen. Stephen closes his eyes and everyone dies. Stephen wasn't understanding what is happening to him. Later, the mysterious voice asks Stephen to run. Now he runs from here in a van, and the companions of Harrow were behind him. They were also ended, and then Stephen awakes. He says thank God it was a dream and becomes happy. Later, like always, he unchains his feet and removes the tape, and then goes to the restaurant after being ready. He has a dinner date with his friend. Stephen was waiting for his friend while sitting in the restaurant. She doesn't come for a long time, so he calls her and tells her, "I am waiting for you," but she says, "I have come here 2 days ago and had dinner." Stephen says how this can happen. "We fixed the plan for Friday night." On this, his friend says, "Are you okay? Today is Sunday and you are talking about Friday, which was 2 days before." Stephen goes home and then starts eating the chocolates he bought for his friend. Then he sees a secret hole in his house and finds a key along with a mobile phone. He checks the phone and there were missed calls from a girl named Layla. When she again calls, Stephen asks, "Where are you?" But Layla says, "What happened, Mark?" And he replies, "I am Stephen, not Mark." Layla disconnects the call and Stephen goes to the washroom. He sees his reflection talking to him. It says, "Stop your search, Stephen," and he gets scared after hearing this. He was getting scared of his own house and comes out of his house. He was seeing the Egyptians of the god Khonshu everywhere. He don't know what is happening. He can't figure it out at this point. He was very frustrated. Later, he gets more scared. When he goes to his job and sees Harrow, he became shocked after seeing him there, in front of him. He thinks this man came into my dreams. Harrow says to Stephen, "I want to help you from the thing you are escaping." Harrow puts his wooden scale in Stephen's hand. He moves his hand, but the statue of the scale in Harrow's hand starts moving. Harrow sees this, but Stephen runs from there while leaving his hand. because he was sacred very much. Stephen was returning home and feels like a dog is barking. But when he turns strange animal like jackal attacks him. He hears Harrow, who was asking for the scarab and in return, I will spare you. Stephen hides in the washroom to escape from it. When he sees into the mirror, then he sees a man like him in the mirror saying, Don't be scared and give me your body. Stephen gets panicked because the monster was about to move inside while breaking the door. He has no other way, so he agrees with what his reflection was saying. He says, Okay, take my body, and then Stephen is shown changing into Moon Knight. He comes out and ends the monster. Stephen awakes and was worried, so he goes to the museum's washroom and finds many broken things there. He goes to a man and asks him to show him the CCTV footage. He says to Stephen, You will not believe your eyes on what you will see. Stephen is shown in the video doing strange acts. There wasn't the monster in the video who was ended by him yesterday night. Because of the loss in the museum, the owner terminates Stephen, while considering him mad due to his condition. Stephen again goes to the statue as he went at the start of the series after leaving office and tells it that I have found a key and a mobile from my home. Then he goes to the locker company whose key he has, and asks the receptionist, Is there any locker by the name Mark or Stephen? He says, Yes, Mark, sir, come let me take you to your locker. He finds a bag there in which there was a lot of money. He finds a gun. He also finds a passport. His name was written, Mark, on it. He also finds a scarab in the locker for which the Harrow beast was behind him. As he presses it, his wings appear and he starts flying. Stephen has read many things about Egyptians for staying awake at night. He discovers actually the scarab was a compass. His reflection again appears in the mirror and starts talking to him. Stephen says, Come, I was waiting for you. Who are you? You are a ghost, or who you are? He says, I am a servant of the Egyptian god. And Mark says, Our problem is one and there is only a solution for this. To give me your body and sleep peacefully. Stephen refuses and says, Don't know how many innocent people you have ended through my body. He says, This bag of yours is illegal. I will hand over this to the police. He says the police will imprison me in the locker and then you will spare me. Stephen was living in the Egyptian of the god was behind him and he runs from the locker and comes out. So a girl makes him sit on her bike while saying, Mark, where were you for so many days? Stephen asks her who is she. And she says, Don't you know me? I am your wife, Layla, and he becomes confused hearing this. He asks her to go with him to his house and reaching home, Layla says, Mark, what has happened to you? Now he wants to tell her about him and Mark forbids him and warns him not to tell anything to Layla. Otherwise, they will start chasing her. Now, Layla, who was considering Stephen, Mark pushes him and starts checking his bag. She finds the scarab and says, Mark, this is the scarab, we were searching for it for many years. Now if you have got it, so you are lying to me. Now you are behaving like you have memory loss. He says, I am not lying and keep it if you want this. My name is Stephen, not Mark. My life is in danger and only you can save it. Then his door knocks and when he checks there were police. Layla hides and the police hold Stephen. The police officers take Stephen to Harrow. Because they also worship the goddess Ammit, like Harrow. Harrow takes Stephen with him and makes him drink soup and talks to him. He says I was also an avatar of the god of Egyptian, Khonshu. I am the god of Egyptian, who punishes those who sin. Ammit punishes the ones who were about to commit sins. He asks him to think if the sins will be removed before they are done and how peaceful the world will be. Harrow asks for the scarab and says I will revive my god, Ammit. Stephen says a god looks like a crocodile, can we believe on it? The people there work for Harrow, and they were about to end him. But Layla arrives and saves him. Harrow again sends his monster behind Stephen, and Layla asks him to wear his suit immediately. Stephen asks which suit. And Layla says the superhero suit you have. His reflection, Mark, was also asking him to do this. He gets scared and then jumps from the building, falling down. He comes into his superhero suit. Stephen makes a mistake here and now the monster was beating him. Meanwhile, Mark arrives and asks Stephen to give him his body. Stephen says yes and changes into the Moon Knight. There was a fight between Mark and the monster and he ends that monster. He also takes his weapons back from him, but during their fight, the scarab falls down and Harrow finds it. Now, Stephen says to Mark, your task is completed, so give my body back. Mark refuses to give his body back. Now you will be imprisoned inside me as you have done many wrong tasks. Stephen says you have done many wrong tasks from my body and ended many people and don't know how many more you will end. Later, Egyptian of God arrives and says to Mark, the scarab has been taken by Harrow. You have to take it back, but Mark says I can't do this. Then Egyptian of God says if you will not do this you will have an objection with my new servant. That will be your wife. Hearing this, Mark says what I will have to do. It is shown in the next scene. Mark has reached Egypt and his wife also reaches there with a fake passport. Harrow starts digging the tomb of Ammit after discovering it. Mark fights with the companions of Harrow and asks them about him. He tries to end a man and asks the address of Harrow. The man cuts his rope and falls down while taking Ammit's name. Mark again goes to Khonshu and asks now how will we capture Harrow. He asks have you any idea? Then Khonshu makes a lunar eclipse. Then he calls all of his avatars for a meeting. Harrow also arrives, who was the warrior of Ammit. Egyptian of God asks him why he has called them here. Stephen says to punish Harrow. Because he wants to revive Ammit. He inquires if he has any proof. However, he has no proof. The warriors say we will change you into a stone if you will do anything wrong with the sky. They leave. Harrow and Mark was also leaving. The goddess of love takes Mark aside and says if you know he is reviving Ammit, you have to reach its statue. None knows except for a warrior named Sinfo, where that statue is buried. The warrior is in a coffin and Mark tries to find out the coffin in the markets of Egypt. His wife, Layla, also arrives and says I know where the coffin is. Mark doesn't want to put her life in danger. But she says none can take you to the coffin except for me. Mark agrees and she takes him to her old friend who was fond of collecting ancient things. He has kept the Sinfo's coffin. Mark goes near the coffin and doesn't understand what was written on the coffin. He takes the help of Stephen to solve what was written on the coffin. Meanwhile, Harrow arrives and there was a mummy named Sinfo in that coffin. But he destroys it and Mark changes into the Moon Knight. There was a heavy fight and they beat the Moon Knight. The man to whom his wife has brought him was her friend and trying to end Mark. He saves his wife and ends that man later. Mark and his wife bring the burnt pieces of the map with them. Now they try to understand the map. As they understand the map, it was a star shape, and Mark says the writing is 2000 years old. The stars change their position daily, and we have to move 2000 years back to understand this map. Khonshu says, Stephen, listen to me. Ask Mark to save me when the gods will change me into a stone. Later, they bring the time 2000 years ago. Due to it, the stars change their place. Now his wife discovers the location with the help of the map, and Khonshu has again molested the sky, so they change Khonshu into a stone with the help of their god. The next day, Stephen and Mark's wife moves for finding Harrow. Mark, who was imprisoned in the mirror, again asks Stephen to give him his body. You can't face Harrow alone. When Stephen and Mark's wife reach the tomb, they see Harrow and his companions have moved inside. Mark again asks Stephen for giving him his body, but he wasn't agree. He was excited to go to the tomb along with Mark's wife. His wife says there is a fragrance of Mark inside you. She takes him inside the tomb. When they go inside, find it was a labyrinth. Stephen sees Sirius's eye, but he has read the books of archaeologists of Egyptians, so has much information. Now they move forward. As they were moving forward, a huge monster arrives. It attacks them and Stephen throws a rack at it. They got separated, and now the monster was behind Layla. As the monster attacks Layla, she makes it fall down into a ditch. Then Harrow sees her and tells her, do you know, Mark has ended your father. Stephen finds the tomb and reaches the coffin, then takes out Ammit's statue. Layla arrives and asks Stephen to call back Mark immediately. She says, I want to ask him why he ended my father. Harrow also arrives there and asks for Ammit's statue from Stephen. Stephen refuses to give him the statue, and Harrow shoots him. Likewise, he ends him, and Layla hides there. Later, the story shifts to an asylum, and Mark is shown as a patient, and Harrow was his doctor. Harrow was saying, look, Mark, the stories you were telling about Moon Knight and Stephen. But then, Mark remembers that Harrow has ended him. The doctor who was in front of him was Harrow. Later, Mark runs from there and locks himself in a room. He sees a coffin in the room and a mummy appears from it. He became shocked. But then he realized that this mummy was none other than Stephen. Marx became shocked after seeing him and become happy. They both become happy and hug each other. When they were leaving, a goddess-like hippopotamus appeared in front of them. He was very large in size. This hippopotamus was an Egyptian goddess named Taweret, and says to Mark, look, you are dead. But he says, what am I doing here if I am dead? He doesn't believe the goddess. But she tells, look, when a human dies, he is lost in strange thoughts. You just see visions and nothing else. As Mark opens the door to go out, the goddess, Taweret, arrives with her plane and puts Stephen and Mark's hearts on the scale. If your heart will weigh less than feather of Mart, you will be sent to gods. If your heart will weigh more, you will be sent into the sand field. The scale starts moving and the goddess says, you have done such tasks in your life which you forgot. Now you have to go inside the door again and will have to collect your forgotten memories. So the scale will recognize you well. Later, when they open the door, they reach the asylum. Now, Mark and Stephen get lost in each other's memories. Stephen sees those people who were ended by Mark, and then asks him why he has ended so many people. Mark answers him as I end those people who commit sins and then see a kid there. He goes behind him, and discovers Mark and his brother moving to a cave to play. Then the water filled in the cave and his brother dies while drowning. Mark escapes and his mother doesn't like him. She blames Mark for her son's death and tortures her. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Egypt and Mark sees while digging for some important things. Then some people attacked there and many of them were ended. Layla's father was also included in them. He was an archaeologist named Abdullah. Later, the Egyptian temple is shown. Stephen sees himself and he was injured. He was trying to end himself, but then he hears a voice from behind. The voice says, "Is this the value of your life?" It says, "I can save your life before this. You have to be my servant and will have to remove the cruelty." Mark says, "Okay, I am ready," and then he has the Moon Knight's power. Later, Mark has become the warrior of the moon of the night and the Egyptian of God. He was also working for him as well. They leave after seeing all this and reach the plane of the god, the world of deads, and they see the scale that is equal now. Some people arrive there and people like monsters attack them due to it. Stephen falls down and was changing into a stone. Mark was taken to the world of gods and then the present scene is shown. Harrow shoots Stephen and he falls into the water. He takes him out of the water and leaves while taking the statue of Ammit from him. Harrow was leaving and the police stop him at a checkpost. He magically makes Ammit eats all souls. He opens the pyramid and the other Egyptians of gods try to stop Harrow, as they have discovered that Harrow is reviving Ammit, but he ends everyone and revives Ammit while breaking her statue. Now she comes out of the statue and thanks Harrow. Mark's wife was also there and finds out Khonshu's statue and releases it. Then he says to Layla, "Will you be my new servant?" She says, "No, I will not be a slave of yours." She doesn't agree with it. Later, Khonshu moves to fight with Ammit. Mark reaches the peaceful ground and doesn't want to leave Stephen alone. Then he goes to save him and was also changing into a stone like Stephen, and a door opens. And they become normal. Later, Taverate, God comes with her plane and says God is happy with you and you have to complete a task in the world. The seems too happy after hearing it. Now we again shift to the storyline where Harrow has ended Stephen. His bullets have come out and he again changes into Moon Knight. Then, Khonshu comes to meet him and tells him, Ammit has been released. Stephen says, "Okay, we will help you, but after it, you will have to release us. We want freedom from your slavery." Layla was talking to the avatar of Sirius. He tells her only a warrior can end Ammit. The Taverate god makes him a warrior. Harrow was punishing the people who have committed sins. Then he was serving their souls to his Ammit god. Meanwhile, Moon Knight arrives and there was a fight between Harrow and Moon Knight. On another side, Ammit and Khonshu were fighting, and Ammit says, "We are the same. I punish before the sins are committed and you punish after the commitment of sins. Why don't we become the same?" And beats Khonshu a lot. Harrow was also beating the Moon Knight. Layla arrives and she has also become a warrior. So she has a lot of powers and helps Moon Knight to defeat Harrow. Khonshu was facing Ammit, and Moon Knight ends Harrow. Later, Moon Knight and Layla move to a pyramid and start doing magic, then they imprison Ammit into Harrow. Later, Khonshu was about to end Harrow, but Moon Knight says we will not end him. He stops him from doing that, tell him that, if we did that, what will be the difference between us and Ammit, if we will end him. Then, Stephen asks Khonshu to release him. Then Khonshu releases him. After that, movie's post-credit is shown. It is shown in the post-credit scenes of the movie. Khonshu was moving in a car with Harrow. At this point, we see the new avatar of Stephen. He killed Harrow with his new avatar. Then the series ends through his new avatar.